and all of that. So how does the mind move through the stress of the unknown, and how do we move ourselves out of that that area?
Yeah, the stress of the unknown is really very interesting because it's what we don't understand. We don't have a reference in our mind for the unknown in these situations. So this kind of a disaster takes place. We go back to a reference in our mind of what has happened and how we handled it. But when something like this works tragically, the unknown becomes that really dark space that we can go into if we're not careful. So hope becomes a big part of that. Knowing that if we have hope in the situation and that we're going to do everything we can, others are going to do everything they can to make this work. And I love the word hope because if you take the E off, it means hop or elevate. And we have to stay elevated in the middle of a situation like this until we get enough data back that we can know we can make good decisions and hope for the best. And if things don't work out the way we excitedly were hoping for, that's reality in life. Then we just have to deal with that, unfortunately. And that's part of the grief process.
And we move into that. So now I don't want to say lost hope, but we have awareness that things aren't the way we had hoped they might be.
Sure.
Now we're into the understanding and dealing with the grief after a disaster. How do you handle that?
Yeah, grief is a very interesting process, and it is a process from past reality to a new reality, but it takes months to go through that. So our current situation in the midst of grief, first stage of grief is shock. And that's a really good thing because we become anesthetized. So we have a chemical numbing effect that takes place in our bodies. Our minds can adapt to it, but eventually that wears off. It takes days for that to wear off. But when there's tragedy like this and there's an uncertainty, that can be prolonged. That's really a good thing for us as survivors and communities trying to monitor what's happening, because that gives us an opportunity to care for people around us, to stay hopeful. And then when the results come back, then we can move through those stages of grief. That's why I write about these things, about suffering through grief and pressure and stress. And that's why the answers are all within ourselves. It's just how do we get to those answers in the middle of a crisis like this?
And sometimes we're not going to have them when we want them. And, that's, and I think what happens too here is there's a desire to maybe immediately lay blame, find a cause, and that could be laying blame can just create more anger and frustration, and the cause may be a long ways out.
Yeah, finding a reason for a tragedy is really not comforting because it doesn't help us. It doesn't change the fact that there's loss of life, there's loss of personal things. And listen, we grieve anything we lose, even our personal effects. I mean, if we lost things that were very sensitive to us in a moment, they're not recoverable necessarily. So we grieve a lot of different things. So to try to find out why something happened, some cases people never find out why their loved ones were in a situation of injury or death. And that part is reality. So that comes later on in the grief process. But for now, beginning stages is really about staying focused and trying to do the best you can for your family, your community, and stay hopeful that the results will be there. And then there'll be plenty of time for the investigation and the legal to find out how, hopefully not this to happen again.
Thank you very much. I think
You're
did
welcome. Okay, I'll get into it this time. Thank you.
Okay, honey. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.